All right. With Keynes' criticism of self-correcting economy, the basic idea behind this is, remember, okay, the classical economists, they believed, okay, when you take a look at GDP, okay, which equals also aggregate demand, that what happens is if consumers don't spend as much, so their spending goes down, that automatically investment typically picks it up. Why? Because what is not spent, sorry, is saved. What is saved is then put in a bank. The banks don't want to just sit on the money, okay, because they have to pay interest on it. So what do they want to do? They want to loan it out. How do they loan it out? They create demand for their product. What do? They lower their price, which is the interest rate. So when they lower the interest rates, then all of a sudden, boom, okay, investment spending. Businesses all of a sudden want to borrow that money because it's such a good deal to get it at a low interest rate. So they pick up the slack, and then all of a sudden, everything else is the same with government purchases, exports, and imports. So boom, our economy's back on track and aggregate demand increases again. Now, here's the deal. We all see this going on now, and it happened back in 2008, 2009 with the recession as well. What happened is when consumers weren't spending money, businesses weren't as well. They were afraid to take out those loans. Okay, why? Because why are they going to sit there and expand their business and produce more product when people aren't buying it? So that's where Keynes comes in basically and says that sometimes investment spending won't pick up. All right, so when you go down to the classical savings schedule, you got the real interest rate, which is the price, and then of course the money, okay, of saved. So when you take a look, supply of savings, they say the supply of savings depends on interest rates. When's the last time that you decided to put money in the bank, okay, and save more because of interest rates? Okay, the typical average American doesn't. We have a specific amount that we save just based off of our habits and so on. So really, it's not as elastic and not as slanted as this, and we'll show you that on the next page. Going on, classical plan investment schedule. So plan investment would be by businesses. So you got real interest rates. They say the lower interest rates, okay, then of course the more you're going to have of investment spending. So businesses will borrow more money at those low interest rates. At high interest rates, they won't. Now we call it the marginal efficiency of investment with Keynes. Keynes basically says that businesses don't always look at their interest rate. They look at whether it's an efficient investment or not. Okay, and our business is going to be able to make their money back. So I'm not going to build a new factory if people aren't going to be buying my product. Okay, even if the interest rates are low. All right, when you put those two together, you have the supply, okay, of savings, so supply of money, and the marginal efficiency of investment or planned investments, how much is going to happen. So basically, they will give you the interest rate, okay, and of course the amount of dollars that are going to be needed. So this is kind of the self-correcting idea between the classical economists and what their beliefs were. Now remember, the key to this is whatever is not spent is saved, and whatever is saved, okay, ends up going to the bank, and then it gets borrowed by businesses, and the economy ends up growing. Now, okay, here's what Keynes basically says about all this information. Okay, Keynes basically starts out with the savings schedule. If you take a look, okay, on the last page, it was more slanted like this, like supply, like the supply curve. Okay, now it's almost straight up and down the supply of savings. Okay, and the reason why we do this is because his theory says people don't go and take a look at interest rates to decide whether they're going to put more money away or not. It's based off of habit. Okay, and that's the marginal propensity to consume and the marginal propensity to save that we talked about before. And right now, just the last few years, our savings rate has been about 5% on average. Okay, and we just continually save about 5% on average. Okay, so it might have a slight slope like this, okay, but it's almost straight up and down. Okay, how much is saved is based on household income, saving habit, not interest rates, is what Keynes says. Going on to the second part is planned investment. Remember MEI, okay, marginal efficiency of investment and so on. So what he says is firm spending on capital expansion is based on profitability, not interest rates. Okay, so what you have is you have the two curves. This is like the demand for money. This is the supply of money. Typically, remember, supply slopes this way, demand slopes this way. They intersect with each other. So the same thing is going to happen like over in this chart. Okay, you might have them end up, okay, sloping and connecting right here at equilibrium, and that's going to be your interest rate, and then how much is going to be produced. Okay, over here though, what Keynes says is they might not hit each other. Okay, and they might not hit each other in the positive. They might end up intersecting in the negative, meaning negative interest rates. And right now, if you've been paying attention to the news, they've been talking about those negative interest rates. All right, so the first idea, okay, is that planned investment doesn't always take care of things. Planned investments don't always end up increasing the demand, okay, aggregate demand. Instead, what's going to happen is you're going to have negative interest rates possibly. You're going to have consumers cut back on spending. You're going to have businesses cut back on spending. And then, of course, when you take a look back, when we take a look at demand, right up here, the formula is consumption, which is consumers, investment, businesses, government purchases, exports, imports. So if consumers aren't spending and investments, businesses aren't spending, who's it left to? The government. Okay, and that's where Keynes comes in and says fiscal policy in some places have to be taken care of. So if our economy demand shifts because businesses and consumers aren't, buying stuff, instead of going from A to B, okay, and waiting for it to get back to C, what happens is if we have the government spend money like we have been doing right now with this COVID situation going on, what's going to happen is when the government spends 2 trillion dollars, it's going to help shift the demand back, okay, and get it closer to equilibrium. And then the money's going to come into our pockets like the rebates, unemployment compensation, those PPP loans, okay, for small businesses. So that money being filtered in, okay, is going to help increase the demand and try to get it back. All right, the second thing he goes through, he talks about the second challenge to classical economists, self-correcting economies, is wages are rigid. Okay, wages are sticky, so are prices. They don't like to change them. So businesses right now, when I take a look, they're hurting a little bit. Okay, but not very often will you see them lower their prices because they're afraid if they start lowering their menu prices, like at, let's say, Chipotle, then they're going to have to keep those there because people don't like them when they go up and down. It's no different than wages. There are some people that rather take a job loss, okay, instead of taking a wage cut, and it's happened several times throughout history. So in that area, it just goes through and talks about that. So make sure you read through that. If you have questions, just email me. All right. See you, class.